towards the end. So what we do is we provide training to people who just come in. So if you have somebody who's a cleaner, cleans the stations, all the way to people who maintain our right-of-way. So our hydraulics, our technical folks, our skilled trades people, we provide training to that. I currently have almost a little bit more than 200 employees under my purview. Almost about 170 of them are trainers. 25 managers. I feel like I've lost a couple since these numbers were put together. And then 13 in other titles, so some of my professional technical titles. We have over almost 360 classroom courses and 27 computer-based training classes. We provide training in over 26 locations within the 4 boroughs. So we do training out in the yards. We do training. We have, how many of you have heard of PS 248, the Learning Center? Yeah. We do, so we have classrooms. Of course, we have that whole school, that whole facility. I think you guys had a meeting last year at the Signal School.
Yes, we did.
That falls under my purview. So the classrooms over there, up at 53rd Street. I mean, we have training locations everywhere. What's interesting is that the commitment of new employees who have to really travel the system to get to their training locations. I think it's a real test for people, a real testament for people's commitment to their job if they live in North Manhattan and have to come all the way out to Coney Island to go to training. And we have 85 classrooms, and our classrooms is a euphemistic word because it could also mean a room in a trailer or a trailer that we've acquired and reconfigured. My staff is quite ingenious in acquiring and reconfiguring locations so that we can provide training, but we need to provide training out in the location. The way that operations training is organized, it's if you think about the line businesses for Department of Subway or the operation divisions for Department of Subways, that's how we're organized. So I have one group that's my car equipment group, and guess what? They give training to division of car equipment. We have an electrical and electronics area where you are at the Signal School, and we give training to our signals department and our power and substations. Our biggest, I think the biggest area under my purview is service delivery training, and that's for train operators, conductors, train service supervisors, all the people who are responsible for providing customer service in terms of trains falls under that. We also have our stations training. You have station agents, you have your cleaners, station supervisory management staff. And in addition to that, we have what's very important, our safety and emergency response training. And that's training that really crosses over not only to Department of Subways, but also to Department of Buses. And it's really about safety and emergency response. So we have mandated training that we have to give, federal and state mandate, and that training is provided by that group. We also have our hazmat team, and we provide training for that. We provide, that's life safety training. We have a hazardous communication training, also known as right to know training, which most of our employees are required to take some kind of right to know module. And so that training has a lot of people who come from various divisions, and not just what you have in terms of hourly or supervisory staff, but in terms of your management staff as well. Is everybody tracking with me?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Next one we have is a little bit more of what I want to say is a kind of a collective, and that's what we call our track infrastructure. And I want to add one more word to that, elevated escalator training. It's interesting to see how training has morphed, or how the training organization has morphed over the years. And when I first came in, it was just called track and infrastructure. And I'm like, but elevator and escalator is a big piece of the training that we're doing. As well as you know, it's more and more critical. And so we've had to really add that in the name, that it's not just track and infrastructure, but track infrastructure as well as elevated and escalated training. And that's really provided training to our skilled trades employees who come in. And it's interesting how that training is becoming, the demand for that training is becoming larger and more complex. There used to be a time that we just needed to train people who were coming into New York City Transit on our rules and regulations. But as our systems become more complex, as we put on things such as we get new lines in the system, such as 2nd Avenue Subway and 34th Street Hudson Yard, and you get new types of equipment, and as our equipment gets modernized, there's onus on my staff to be able to provide training to the divisions to keep their maintainers up to speed. Also, a big piece of our training is what I want to call our track safety training, which is the training that people have to take, whoever's going on our right-of-way. And not only that, that's also, if there's any training that you would say it's what's my bread and butter, it's our track safety training. We give it Monday through Friday, you know, religiously without break, because of just the demand. There's a demand first for the number of employees who have to take track safety training. The police department, they have to take track safety. Some of the emergency responders who are assigned to subways, or who will have to respond to the subways, they have to also take track safety. When contractors are coming on and they have work that has to be done on the property, they have to take track safety. Many of the unions like to get their members track safety qualified because they know that they have projects with different contractors, and they want to make sure that they've staffed up enough and they have enough people to meet the contract requirements and have that track safety qualified. So that's a little bit about ops training and how we're organized and the support that we do. But let me kind of talk about, so when I started with transit, historically ops training was, it was filled with people who were definitely committed to sharing their knowledge, but it was a little staid, to put it, or a little stale, to be quite frank, because training is one of those things that as long as it's working, people tend not to pay that much attention to. We have subject matter experts. They were committed to delivering training, but there was little focus on innovation and little focus on modernization of how we do training. And then there was little attention paid to how adult learners need to learn. And I think also little attention was being paid to how the employees of New York City Transit were changing and what technologies were we starting to employ and how to make our classrooms more integrated. During my tenure, I'm happy to say that technology's become a big part of the training that we provide. Literally, when I started, our classrooms, there were many classrooms that didn't have projectors, many of our training locations that didn't have internet connection. Many of our training documents were photocopied. There were some of our locations that were using, if you remember the sheets, the transparency sheets. Yes, that you used to put, right, and then you would have to, move the lamp up and down, and everything would kind of just be slightly askew, and something was going off. Now, imagine that for signals training, and people have to read prints, right? And I remember walking into classrooms as I come aboard and was touring the facilities and looking at what people were using and saying, but how come we're not integrating videos? And they would say, we don't have computers. So one of the biggest things, one of the biggest challenges I had in my first couple of years was getting all of our locations networked. And that sounds easier said than done, but remember I said our classrooms are everywhere. So if you have a classroom in the middle of in East New York or Pickett Yard, how do you get that classroom connected to the internet? And just, I mean, there's real cabling issues there. And so that became kind of my biggest initial challenge, was making sure that all of our classrooms had a computer, but a computer that was connected to our intranet so that we had accessibility to more documents. So that was number one. of the issues. Number two was making sure that every classroom had a projector. You know, so you want a computer, you want a projector. And so these were kind of basic pieces. But I'm happy to say that because we've made those initial investments, the type of work that we're doing now is incredible. So now we're talking about the use of simulation. We have a simulator. The simulator, we're looking to update that train simulator. So we have a train simulator that train operators and conductors get on as part of their training. And that's used there. When we look at properties across the world and other transit properties, what they're using to train their train operators or engineers or whatever the title is that they may use to describe the people who operate the trains, is that simulations are part of it. It is an integrated classroom. It is a classroom that, or it is a training program that uses a simulation and then uses actual trains. And so that's one of the areas that we're looking to grow into. One of the other pieces that was critical is making our classrooms more interactive. So moving from just having that subject matter expert. So our trainers have come through, usually have worked within the field that they're training. So someone who's going to train new train operators, train operator induction training is 8 months. It takes 8 months from the time a person is hired before they're allowed to operate a train on their own. Train operator training, but you have what we call train service supervisors who are training the train operators, and they've come up as a train operator. Likewise for conductor. Conductor training is far less than that, but it's far less, conductors is a far less technically complicated job.
But you do train conductors as well?
Yes, we do. We train conductors. Conductor training is 35 days. About, what's that? 7 weeks. Thank you. So it's about 7 weeks. Our training is rigorous. Not everybody is meant to be a train operator. And so our training is rigorous. Not everyone is meant to be a signal maintainer. Signal, if you had the opportunity to look at a signal print, it is complicated stuff. It is really complicated. And to make it even more complicated, you guys have been at the signal school, is that hands-on. So someone has to really be dedicated to become a signal maintainer to be able to have the hands-on. Then you add on the layer of our folks are repairing the system where there's train traffic. And so the safety component is incredible, right? The knowledge, the amount of knowledge that must be retained is also incredible. So train operator training is one. Train operator training, signal maintainer are our longest curriculum. And we have many steps along those training programs where it is pass or fail, and if a person fails, then unfortunately they may not continue in that title because that's just it. And so we've had many opportunities where people have pleaded their case, but the requirements of the job are clearly stated at the beginning, and people are well aware of where that pass and fail.
What's the percentage?
For which one?
For any of these that you're talking about?
Signal, I want to say signal maintainer, we've been able to significantly increase our retention. I mean pass, fail in the program. I'm getting ready to tell you. So we've for signal maintainer, we've significantly increased our retention to, I want to say, about 85%. The reason being is that a person, we now take signal helpers to become signal maintainers. And so we find that we have a better retention by someone who's been a signal helper, and then they become a signal maintainer training because they already are familiar with the environment. Of course, you know, I started with the best data possible. Our train operators is not as high. Train operators, we are about 70%. we are looking at, so that it's, one can say 70%, but then if you look at, well, what's happening in other transportation agencies, is we've benchmarked ourselves to other transit agencies similar in size. So, you know, you look across the world and see what's similar size, and they're not as many as similar size as us, but we'll look at Paris, we looked at some of the Asian properties. I don't remember the name, all of the properties off the top of my head. They tend to, the industry rate tends to be at 85%, and we are at 70%. One of the challenges I think that we have is just time on the trains, time with the actual equipment. But one of the challenges with time on the trains is that we need all of our train cars for customer service, right? Other thing is that if you have trains running in customer service, you don't want to impede trains running in customer service to have student train operators on there. That's number two. The other thing I think, the other challenge I think is, I simply think that, and this is the work that we're doing now, you have to change the training program for the times that you live in. People have less attention span. We're having generations that have grown up with technology in their hand, and it is harder for people to hear concepts. So we've had to do a lot more work to integrate videos, integrate technology, integrate simulation into the train operator training, because it's, and then there's the piece of hand-eye coordination. It's a real hand-eye coordination piece. And there's knowledge retention. You know, we have a wide array of signals, and a train operator must know every signal, 100%, because we don't want a train operator who only knows 90% of the signals, right? So there's that, and I think part of it is that people come into transit and they don't necessarily realize how hard the work is. And I speak to new train operator classes every month, and I say, this is hard work and you have to study. It does, the information does not translate from the manuals to one's brain by osmosis. It takes study, it takes dedication, and it takes real hard work. And I think that's unusual for people to expect when they come in.
You mentioned that conductors are under your purview, right?
Yes.
How long is the training period for a conductor?
35 days.
Okay. Are they expected to learn the routes they're operating on in that time, or do you give them scripts? This is something I've discussed with President Byford on a number of occasions.
Sure.
Because there are conductors that are announcing, for instance, on a weekend, trains that do not run on a weekend, or things of that nature. And President Byford told me they're working on a program that will actually, depending on what GOs are going on, or if it's a weekend or middle of the night or whatever, will automatically spit out the correct script for a conductor. Because as we all know, it's a very complicated system. We don't need to make it more complicated with incorrect info.
That's a good question. I think what happens is that the job of a train operator conductor can become very automated for the employee. You know, most of us, we have automated routines, and the brain has been shown to say the more it automates, the more capacity it has. So the challenge with the employees, and I would venture to say, I would want to, and it would be harder to say, look at the percentage of new employees making a mistake or more veteran employees making a mistake, is that things just go rogue. You know, I have one.
Hence the need for the script.
Hence the need for the script. Hence, they may have the script. Hence the need to say, are you reading the script? That's number one, because you might have it. Are you reading? How many of us have calendars and fail to look at our calendars, right? Right. You know, many times I've missed a meeting because I forgot to look.
Believe it or not, there's even some circumstances where it's an R142 or an R160 and it's got the automated message, but they didn't actually change it for the weekend.
Yeah. And sometimes that's just the human error. That's just the human error of kind of missing that step.
So do you ride with newly
We do.
You do?
Newly trained operators, new trained operators and new conductors, especially brand new. They're known as being a probationary employee for their first year, their first 365 days of employment, and that's calendar days. My staff rides along to do evaluations periodically. We also
Do you ride along announced or unannounced?
Unannounced. Sometimes. Sometimes unannounced, sometimes announced. Because once you see a trained service supervisor in a uniform, then
You're on your toes.
then they're announced, you know. And then the service delivery, they also do their evaluation of the crews. But you're talking about a large staff, right? So you're talking about 7,000.
Of course. Before a conductor starts their route, are they given a list of all the GOs, for instance?
When a conductor comes on to their tour of duty, their responsibility is to read the bulletin, they're supposed to come in early enough, go into the crew office, and review the GOs and the bulletin for the day. Bulletins for the day. Yes.
I'm glad Andrew's saying it, because I have something about GOs too. They sometimes don't, sometimes your trained conductors, and I'm sorry, there are some are good, but there's some do not read the script carefully. And it scares the customers half to death. I'm on the Brighton line, and if say the Q train's ending at Parsec Park, and I'm sorry, we have passengers don't see nothing, but the conductors are not reading the scripts at the times when the queue is being rerouted, or a train is not being rerouted, or being held in the station. And they have the scripts. Why they're not paying attention, I have no clue.
It's hard for me to speak to situations that I don't
And
see.
sometimes the signage is in the wrong thing. It's saying, instead of saying Parsec, like, if I'm going to use the M. The M was supposed to go to 96 and 2nd Avenue. And they were supposed to program it.
Right.
They didn't. Instead it says 57 and 6, and it closes a train backup. Because
Okay.
the sign will say last stop, but the train's not ending there because it's going to 96 and 2nd.
Okay.
Or when it's going back the other way, they could have the sign saying M train going to Metropolitan instead of waiting until they get to 57 and 6. It's throwing everyone off on the train.
Duly noted.
Yeah.
Duly noted.
Because the voice of the conductor, you barely can hear them going, like they're gumbling it.
Yeah. So we do train towards that. Yes.
How arduous is it for you guys to change the scripts? You have several conductors on the A that are so incredibly wonderful. And I'm very serious.
No,
I'd love for a conductor who I was making the announcement to tell me, yes, there's an elevator at this station, where it is on the platform, and sorry, but it's not working. You're going to have to go to such and such to get out of the subway system. I mean, I just sit there in the train going, wow.
We are in the process of training conductors on new announcement protocols, right? So, and this was widely reported in the newspapers several months ago. The protocol was, we were very prescriptive, because that was the culture of the agency at that time. As we move forward and change, it's saying to be more informative and to explain to the conductors the type of information that should be shared rather than being so prescriptive. But you're looking to train 7,000 conductors, in addition to the regular training that has to happen. And so it's coming out, and I'm happy to hear that you're seeing some of the results of it, but it'll take some time to fully saturate until all of the...
I mean, one of these guys has been doing it for years.
And there's some people who their personality,
Yeah.
it's just natural. There's some people that...
themselves.
Right. Yes. And there's some people who are trained, but they're finding it hard to transition from one to the next. Yes.
Is there anything in the curriculum related directly to offering assistance to people with disabilities, for example?
Yes, there is. It's stronger in the station agent curriculum. it is if a person with disability or different abilities comes.
Or senior?
We don't actually speak to senior, that's a good point, but we don't speak to senior.
Well, you're speaking to seniors as a person with a disability.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, if they're slow getting onto the train, it's,
There are youngsters with disabilities.
Customer
right, there are
assistance.
youngsters with disabilities and there are seniors without them. So
Exactly.
it's easy just to talk about disability.
Yes.
I have two questions. One is, what is the protocol when a conductor should override the automated announcement? Or, yeah, just, there's so many times when all of a sudden, you know, you can hear the microphone, they're like working on the microphone and you hear the click, and what prompts, you know, do they have prompts so that if, you know, if a train obviously is going to go express, that's a local train, but in other instances to alert them that, you know, if you're at Times Square and the A isn't running the right way, but you're on the 2 and the 3. I mean, so is there a protocol of when they should, you know, when it used to be everybody had to make announcements, it was one thing, but now with all these trains with automated announcements, is there a protocol? And my second question is, could you talk a little bit about what the training for station cleaners is, and do they get customer service training, and maybe talk a little bit about, do you get involved in the customer service aspect of just even the train conductors and the train operators, as well as the station cleaners?
Sure. So let me deal with your first question. The first protocol is that if the train is delayed, and the protocol is evolving. I want to say there was a protocol that had been in place for quite a number of years, and over the past 9 months has drastically changed and is in the process of being iterative. Do you have a question?
Yes.
Can you give me 1 minute to answer these two questions?
Yeah.
And then I'll come to your question next. And so we now want to present more customer service by being more informative. So the idea if a train is stalled, or for any reason, it's just stopped, that the conductor should get on, you know, if the train is not moving consistently and it's stopped in the station, the conductor should get on and explain why the train has stayed, and to explain it in layman's terms. So not to say that we have, and conductors are still doing this. Remember, everyone is having to learn how to adapt to the new message. Does not use technical terms like we're stuck because of signal problems. What does signal problems mean to the customer? You know, or to use something to say there is congestion up ahead due to whatever, you know. And so there's more
Train
of a
traffic up ahead, how's that one?
Train traffic up ahead. We're trying to find new
Train
language.
passing over us, I like that one.
We're trying to find new language, but as I said, people, you'll hear, you can almost tell in the tone of a person their transition. The challenge is that there's not necessarily a protocol. I don't want to say it's not necessarily. I don't know the answer to the protocol for when to override the automated system if there's not something that's going on erroneous. Does that answer the question? So if you're on a 5 train that's running from Flatbush to Eastchester, and things are going well, the conductor should not override the automated system. One of the other challenges is that the train can get to Times Square. That 5 train can get to Times Square. That conductor may not necessarily know that there's a problem on the A line.
I sure hope that 5 train isn't going to Times Square.
Not to Times Square.
Oh,
I mean,
it could be a reroute.
I got messed up in my job, right?
No.
Sometimes the 5 does go up.
It does, but so if the 2 is going to Times Square, if the 2 train is going to Times Square, you don't want to. That conductor may not know, and that's the work that we have to do with the rail control system, rail control center rather, and letting conductors get that information, timely information, which is something that we're working on, right?
Just to add one other question to go on to that is, you know, with the weekend, with so much work going on, I mean, do conductors say, there's just too much to tell them, and, you know, where's, you know, people tune it out after a while, you know?
That's a good question to ask the conductors, to see how much
is too much?
how much is too much. The other thing is they also have to make sure that they're opening and closing doors properly and that they're not delaying service, you know, and so that's part of it. So let me get to your second question. The short answer to your second question is, yes, we are involved in the customer service. Customer service has become much more critical in the past 9 months. So we have training that we're doing, what we call voice and tone training. And that's going to conductors and station agents. The plan is to roll it out to station cleaners. So right now, the training that we do for station cleaners is how to clean the stations. That's really, it is very much the labor training. We are now realizing that cleaners are a member of our community that the customer sees frequently and may engage with frequently. And so there's a recognition and a plan to provide them some customer service training.
Can you take this question,
Yes.
then we'll get to this gentleman?
Yes.
Because she has to go.
Okay,
Sure.
I have to leave and I'm a member of this council. And it was something, I don't know if you were here when I came in late, but this happens all the time, especially at Grand Central, sometimes at 14th Street. I ride the 4, 5, and 6, but I take the 6 up from 77th Street. And it happens constantly. It happened again today, and there was an 8-minute wait. Why are not, or maybe I should ask, are the conductors or the engineers instructed that at a station where there's an express and a local, and the local is pulling in, there is, number 6 is pulling in, there is a 4 or a 5 right across the track, not far to walk, that is loading passengers. You see it happening. By the time they open the door on the 6, literally today, the door on the number 4 was closed in my face. A lot of other people too, it wasn't just directed at me. This happens invariably. Don't they have some, and then there was an 8-minute wait for the next number 4 or 5 or whatever that got me here. Can they be instructed to just use some common sense? Yes, I know they have schedules to keep everything, but again, we're talking about passenger service and thinking about the passengers. If they see that the train, not even that it's pulling in, but it's in the station and the doors are just opening, to keep their doors open for a minute or 30 seconds longer so that the people on the number 6 can just walk across the track and get on the other train. If you have any idea how frustrating that is.
Actually, I do, because I ride the trains,
Okay.
and they don't open for me.
No, it's not opening for you.
I
It's
raised this with Andy
slamming
as
it.
well.
No,
You
it's
did
a
raise it.
difference
In rush
between-
hour, of course, they're not
Oh,
going to.
no, not during rush
But in
hour.
off-peak,
But
he
this
said they should
morning
be.
at
They should be.
11:37,
Unless something is really amiss. And that's-